It's time to yet again demonstrate how Batman's arch-nemesis doesn't necessarily have to be a clown. It can be something else, like, say, a scarecrow. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Why the Scarecrow should, or at least could be, Batman's arch-nemesis instead of the Joker. We start off with the most obvious reason. Batman and the Scarecrow use the same weapon. What is Batman's greatest weapon? His kung fu kicks? His car? His fancy gadgets? No, it's none of that. Batman's greatest weapon is, of course, fear. Batman scares the crap out of Gotham's criminals, and that's what gives him such an edge over them. And what is the Scarecrow's main gimmick? Well, fear, of course. So you've got fear versus fear. Of course, they use very different techniques of fear. Batman uses theatrics and acting to scare criminals, while the Scarecrow, of course, uses his patented fear toxin. So it's not a case of carbon copies. That would not have been interesting and not made for good rivals. They both mastered fear in very different ways. A thing they do have in common, though, are their costumes. They both dress up in spooky costumes and pretend they're something they're not. Supernatural creatures. Of course, again, it isn't carbon copies though. One is a big hulking bat monster, the other is a scrawny, creepy, living scarecrow. I ask you, what would make for a better rivalry than a contest of who is truly the master of fear? Is it Batman? Is it Scarecrow? If they were arch enemies, this could be explored. The Scarecrow is a master manipulator. This role is often given to the Joker for some strange reason, especially after The Dark Knight came out. But why the hell would a clown be a master manipulator? Wouldn't it make more sense if the former psychologist was the master manipulator? That's right, perhaps you forgot, but Scarecrow, aka Dr. Jonathan Crane, used to be a psychologist. All versions portray him as a former psychologist to some capacity, either as a teacher in psychology, a private practitioner, or sometimes even as the head doctor of Arkham Asylum itself. The Scarecrow knows everything there is to know about the mind. He knows what buttons to push to get to people. It used to be his job after all. While he's often portrayed as being dependent on his fear toxin, he shouldn't actually need to be. He should be able to scare the crap out of people with mere words. This is a man who can spot a person's worst fears and nightmares simply by talking to them for a brief while. With skills like that, he should easily be able to manipulate people into doing whatever he wants. Why this ability has been given to the Joker instead, a guy with zero background in psychology, I have no idea. No, that's not true. I do know. It's because he's popular. So let's give all the badass skills to him, even though it doesn't make sense. No, the greatest manipulator in the Batman Rogues Gallery should be the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow is the most evil man in Gotham. You may think that title belongs to either the Joker or Victor Zsasz, but I would argue it's Dr. Crane. Sure, Joker and Zsasz kills left and right, but killing someone is not the worst thing you can do to a person. Seriously, it's not. After you're dead, your suffering's over after all. The Scarecrow rarely kills. He instead likes to keep his victims alive. Alive so he can further torture them. And how does he torture them? With physical pain? No, something that's actually worse than that. Psychological terror. The Scarecrow subjects people, innocent people mind you, to their very worst nightmares. Just think about that for a while. He forces them to live through the worst possible things they can imagine, their deepest fears and anxieties. Just imagine yourself in such a situation. Imagine yourself being forced to live through what you fear the very most. And I'm not talking about spiders and snakes here. Creators who pull those cheap tricks just aren't thinking deep enough. I'm talking what you really fear the most. Isn't the guy who does that to you the most evil bastard ever? And keep in mind, he does it for no real reason either, not for profit or an actual purpose. He just enjoys it. So, if Scarecrow is the ultimate evil in Gotham, which I think he is, and Batman is the ultimate good in Gotham, they should naturally be arch-enemies. And for my final argument, which is honestly a bit far-fetched, but I'm throwing it in here for fun anyway. Rich versus poor. Most have probably forgotten, but back in the old days of the 1940s, the Scarecrow didn't just symbolize fear, he also symbolized poverty. In fact, his 1940s stories make a big deal out of the fact he was a symbol of poverty too. And it makes sense. Scarecrows wear raggedy clothes, just like bums. So did Dr. Crane in his original origin, which is what earned him the nickname Scarecrow in the first place. The little money he made, he spent on books and couldn't afford nice clothes. That's the entire reason he became a criminal in the original Scarecrow story. Because he was poor and needed money. You could theoretically bring back this poverty theme to some capacity, and as a result, you would have rich versus poor. Bruce Wayne is a billionaire after all. It could make for an interesting contrast. The super rich superhero versus the raggedy poor villain. Almost like an inverse of the Superman and Lex Luthor rivalry. Batman's suit and gadgets are all high-tech, refined, and like off the assembly line, while Scarecrow's costume and fear toxin is basically homemade, stitched together by hand and improvised. Maybe not the strongest argument for why Scarecrow should be his nemesis, but I thought I should mention it anyway. And there you have it, why I think this Scarecrow should, or at least could be, the Batman's #1 foe instead of the Joker. If you can think of more arguments, please mention them down in the comments. And again, I'm not saying Joker shouldn't be Batman's nemesis. He works really well as a nemesis too. I'm just saying there are other alternatives, and people should stop obsessing too much over the Clown Prince of Crime. He ain't the end-all be-all when it comes to Gotham rogues. Anyway, as always, remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video. With skills like that, he should easily be able to manipulate